Imagine a man who can make millions of teenagers care deeply about the geopolitical history of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the philosophical implications of a dying star, and the brutal reality of severe mental illness, all while sitting in his bedroom talking to a webcam. He is not a traditional teacher, nor is he a typical celebrity author. He is a paradox, a man who has built a massive global empire on intellectual curiosity and radical empathy, yet he spends his daily life battling a mind that constantly tells him he is a danger to his own family. This is the extraordinary reality of a writer who completely redefined what it means to grow up in the digital age. His journey from a homeschooled kid with a vivid imagination to the undisputed king of young adult literature and digital philanthropy is a masterclass in vulnerability, proving that the most powerful stories are not those that offer easy answers, but those that bravely confront the terrifying, beautiful messiness of being human. The genesis of this unparalleled cultural phenomenon began in the late summer of 1977 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Born into a family deeply committed to public service and global health, his early years were marked by frequent relocations as his parents pursued their missionary work. He spent significant portions of his childhood in Orlando, Florida, and Birmingham, Alabama, absorbing the diverse cultural landscapes of the American South. For a period, he and his younger brother were homeschooled, an experience that fostered a deep, independent intellectual curiosity and a profound, unbreakable bond between the two siblings. This early environment, devoid of the rigid structures of traditional schooling, allowed his mind to wander freely across literature, history, and philosophy, laying the groundwork for a worldview that would later captivate millions. His academic journey led him to Kenyon College in Ohio, where he immersed himself in the study of English and religion. It was during these formative university years that he began to seriously consider writing not just as a passion, but as a viable vocation. However, the transition from a student of literature to a published author was neither immediate nor easy. After graduating, he moved to Chicago, taking on a humble internship at a prominent literary review publication. This role immersed him in the mechanics of the publishing industry, teaching him how books were evaluated, marketed, and sold. Yet, the most transformative experience of his early 20s occurred simultaneously, as he took on a job as a student liaison at a children's hospital. Working in the pediatric ward was a profound, life-altering crucible that fundamentally shaped his literary and philosophical outlook. Surrounded by children and teenagers battling terminal illnesses, he witnessed the raw, unfiltered reality of human mortality. He quickly realized that the media's portrayal of sick children as purely inspirational, flawless angels was a dangerous and patronizing myth. The young patients he met were complex, flawed, hilarious, angry, and deeply human. They did not want to be pitted or turned into moral lessons for the healthy. They simply wanted to live, to laugh, and to experience the full spectrum of life, even when time was running out. This brutal, beautiful honesty became the absolute bedrock of his writing. He learned that true empathy requires looking at the ugly, painful realities of life without blinking, and that respecting the dignity of those who suffer means acknowledging their full humanity, not just their tragedy. This profound understanding of mortality and the teenage experience culminated in his debut novel, a story about a troubled teenager seeking meaning and redemption at a boarding school. Writing the book was an arduous process, filled with self-doubt and numerous rejections from publishers who felt the manuscript was too dark or too complex for a young audience. When it was finally published, it defied all industry expectations. The novel resonated deeply with readers who were starving for a protagonist who felt authentic, who grappled with genuine existential questions, and who was allowed to be imperfect. The critical acclaim was swift, culminating in the prestigious Michael L. Prince Award, instantly establishing him as a vital, transformative voice in young adult literature. He had proven that teenagers were capable of handling profound, challenging narratives, and he refused to talk down to his audience. Just as his literary career was taking off, he inadvertently stumbled into a medium that would amplify his voice to a global scale. In the year 2007, he and his brother began posting daily video blogs on a nascent platform called YouTube. What started as a quirky, inside joke-filled project between siblings quickly evolved into a massive, highly engaged digital community known as Nerdfighteria. He used this platform not just to share personal anecdotes, but to teach complex topics, from the history of the world to the nuances of literature and science. He championed the concept of decreasing world suck, a philosophical framework that encouraged his audience to actively seek out and combat the injustices and cruelties of the world through education, empathy, and direct action. This digital empire gave him a direct, unfiltered connection with his readers, bypassing the traditional marketing machinery of the publishing industry and creating a fiercely loyal, intellectually curious fan base. The zenith of his literary and cultural impact arrived with the publication of a novel about two teenagers who meet in a cancer support group. Drawing heavily on his experiences in the children's hospital, he crafted a narrative that was simultaneously heartbreaking, hilarious, and fiercely intelligent. He refused to sanitize the experience of terminal illness, portraying the physical pain, the medical trauma, and the emotional toll with unflinching honesty, while also celebrating the profound joy and love that can exist in the face of inevitable loss. The book became an unprecedented global phenomenon, shattering sales records and dominating bestseller lists for years. Its subsequent adaptation into a major motion picture introduced his work to an even wider audience, cementing his status as a cultural titan. He had managed to capture the specific, intense emotional landscape of adolescence and translate it into a universal story about the human condition. Yet, behind the massive commercial success and the adoration of millions, he was fighting a deeply private, exhausting battle with severe mental illness. For years, he had suffered from debilitating obsessive-compulsive disorder and crippling depression, conditions that he eventually chose to discuss publicly to destigmatize mental health struggles. He described his mind as a territory that was constantly under siege by intrusive, terrifying thoughts, a reality that made everyday functioning an immense, exhausting effort. This profound personal struggle became the focal point of his next major novel, a deeply autobiographical exploration of a teenager navigating the suffocating, inescapable spiral of severe OCD. The book was praised for its terrifying accuracy in depicting the internal mechanics of the disorder, offering a lifeline of understanding to readers who felt isolated in their own mental health battles. By laying bare his own psychological vulnerabilities, he reinforced his core message that mental illness is not a character flaw, but a medical reality that deserves compassion and rigorous treatment. His commitment to decreasing world suck extended far beyond his writing and his videos, manifesting in massive, highly effective philanthropic endeavors. Recognizing the immense privilege and wealth his success had afforded him, he and his brother dedicated a significant portion of their earnings to global health initiatives. They became major donors and vocal advocates for organizations fighting infectious diseases in the developing world, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. They funded the construction of medical facilities, supported the training of healthcare workers, and helped provide life-saving treatments to millions of people. This philanthropy was not performed for public relations, it was a direct application of his core philosophy that those who have the resources to fix systemic problems have a moral obligation to do so. He transformed his digital influence into tangible, life-saving interventions, proving that the internet could be a force for profound global good. As the digital landscape and the publishing industry continued to evolve, he adapted his creative output to explore new formats and deeper philosophical inquiries. He launched a highly successful podcast that reviewed various aspects of the Anthropocene, blending memoir, cultural criticism, and historical analysis into a deeply moving exploration of how human experiences intersect with the broader world. He continued to write, to produce educational content, and to mentor the next generation of creators, always maintaining his signature blend of intellectual rigor and emotional warmth. He never allowed himself to be comfortably pigeonholed as just a young adult author, consistently pushing his creative boundaries and challenging his audience to think more critically about the world around them. The legacy of this extraordinary creator is permanently woven into the cultural and literary fabric of the 21st century. He fundamentally transformed young adult literature, proving that books for teenagers could be intellectually demanding, emotionally complex, and commercially dominant without sacrificing artistic integrity. He pioneered the concept of the author as a digital community builder, showing that a writer's relationship with their audience could be a continuous, interactive dialogue rather than a one-way broadcast. More importantly, he provided a generation of young people with the vocabulary and the permission to confront their own anxieties, their grief, and their existential doubts. From the quiet wards of a children's hospital to the massive stages of global literary fame, his journey is a profound demonstration of the power of radical empathy and intellectual honesty. He did not just write stories about the human experience, he actively participated in it, using his immense platform to champion the marginalized, to destigmatize mental illness, and to remind us all that while the world can be incredibly cruel, it is also profoundly beautiful, and entirely worth fighting for.